Bernadette Caldwell stared at the telegram in her trembling hands, knowing that in 3 days she would meet the rancher who believed she was delicate, petite, and in need of protection. The truth was that at nearly 6 feet tall and broad-shouldered from years of hauling water and splitting wood on her family's failed farm in Missouri, she was anything but the dainty flower her cousin had described in the letters she had written on Bernadette's behalf. The year was 1876, and Wheatland, Wyoming was a dusty frontier town that promised new beginnings for those brave enough to venture west. Bernadette had watched her father drink himself to death after losing their farm, had buried her mother 6 months later from a broken heart, and had nowhere left to turn when her cousin Melody suggested answering an advertisement for a mail-order bride. Melody had elegant handwriting and a romantic imagination, which meant the letters she penned made Bernadette sound like a wilting violet who needed a strong man's care. Nothing could be further from the truth. As the stagecoach rattled into Wheatland 3 days later, Bernadette's stomach churned with anxiety. The other passengers had given her plenty of space on the journey, partly because of her size and partly because she had been too nervous to make conversation. She pressed her face against the dusty window and watched the town emerge from the endless prairie. Wooden buildings lined a wide main street, horses stood hitched to posts, and men in worn leather and denim moved about their business under the relentless Wyoming sun. The coach lurched to a stop outside the general store, and Bernadette gathered her single carpet bag, the only possession she had left in the world besides the dress on her back and one spare. She stepped down from the coach, her sturdy boots hitting the dirt with a solid thud, and immediately saw him. Yates Morrison stood near the hitching post, hat in his hands, sandy hair catching the afternoon light. He was tall himself, probably 6 feet 2 inches, with the lean, muscled build of a man who worked from dawn until dusk. His face was weathered from the sun, with lines around his eyes that suggested he smiled often, though he was not smiling now. He was staring at her with an expression she could not quite read. Bernadette forced herself to walk toward him, her chin lifted in defiance even as shame burned in her chest. She had not meant to deceive him, but the letters were already sent before she knew what Melody had written. She stopped a few feet away, meeting his gaze directly. "Mr. Morrison." Her voice came out stronger than she felt. "Miss Caldwell." He continued to stare at her, his gray eyes traveling from her face down to her feet and back up again. She was used to men looking at her like she was some kind of curiosity, a woman who had grown too large for her own good. She straightened her shoulders and prepared for rejection. "I know the letters probably describe someone different," she began, her words coming fast. "My cousin wrote them, and she has a tendency to embellish. If you want to send me back, I understand. I have a little money saved. I can pay for my return passage once I find work somewhere." Yates put his hat back on his head and stepped closer. Up close, she could see the silver threading through his hair at the temples, putting him somewhere in his early 30s. His face was kind despite its weathered appearance, and when he finally spoke, his voice was deep and warm. "How are you with horses?" The question caught her off guard. "What?" "Horses. Can you handle them? I grew up on a farm. I can handle any horse that will not kill me, and I have dealt with a few that tried." A smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. "Can you mend fences, fix a roof, haul hay?" Bernadette felt her defenses rising. "Mr. Morrison, I do not need you to mock me. I said I would leave." "I am not mocking you, Miss Caldwell. I am trying to determine if you are as capable as you look." He gestured toward a wagon hitched nearby. "I have a ranch 10 miles outside of town. It is just me and my foreman, Marcus, trying to work 500 acres and manage 100 head of cattle. My last 3 hired hands quit because the work was too demanding. I advertised for a bride because I thought I needed someone to keep the house and cook the meals, but honestly—" He ran a hand through his hair, looking almost embarrassed. "What I really need is another pair of strong hands and someone who would not mind building a life with a man who works too hard and has too much land and too few people to help him work it." Bernadette stared at him, trying to determine if this was some kind of cruel joke. "You mean you want me to work the ranch?" "I mean I need a partner, Miss Caldwell. Someone who can work alongside me and help build something lasting." The letters described a delicate woman who needed protecting, and I will be honest, I was dreading it. I do not have time to protect anyone. I need someone strong enough to stand on her own 2 feet and help me save this ranch before I lose everything. He met her eyes, and the honesty in his gaze made her breath catch. "The advertisement also said I was looking for a wife, and I meant that too. But I need you to know what you are getting into before you decide anything. This will not be an easy life." The afternoon sun beat down on them as Bernadette processed his words. She had expected rejection, pity, or disgust. She had not expected this gruff, honest rancher to look at her like she might be the answer to his prayers. "I can work," she said quietly. "I have worked hard all my life. But I do not know you, Mr. Morrison, and you do not know me. How do you know I am not lazy or mean-spirited or likely to rob you blind? Same way you will know if I am decent or cruel or likely to mistreat you. We will take time to figure it out." He held out his hand. "Come out to the ranch. Stay in the spare room. Work with me for a few weeks, and we will see if this arrangement might work for both of us. If it does not, I will pay your passage to wherever you want to go. Fair?" Bernadette looked at his outstretched hand, calloused and honest, and thought about her options. She could refuse and try to find work in town, but jobs for women were scarce and usually involved saloons or laundries that paid pennies. She could try to go back east, but there was nothing there for her now. Or she could take a chance on this unusual man who seemed to value strength over delicacy. She reached out and shook his hand, her grip firm. "Fair." The ride out to the Morrison ranch gave Bernadette time to observe Yates more closely. He handled the wagon with easy competence, his movements economical and sure. He pointed out landmarks as they traveled, his voice carrying genuine affection for the land. "That is Rawhide Creek, runs through the southeast corner of my property. It is not much, but it never runs dry, which is more than most can say. That ridge to the north is where the elk come down in winter. The grass here is some of the best in Wyoming when the rain cooperates." "When did you come out here?" Bernadette asked, relaxing slightly as the town disappeared behind them. 5 years ago. Bought the land with money I saved working cattle drives from Texas. I always wanted my own place, somewhere I could build something permanent." He glanced at her. "Your letters said you lost your family. I am sorry." "Thank you. It has been difficult." She hesitated, then decided honesty was best. "My father lost our farm to debt and drink. My mother followed him to the grave 6 months later. I think she just gave up. I tried to find work in town, but nobody wanted to hire a woman my size. People find me unsettling." "People are fools," Yates said bluntly. "You look strong and healthy. Those are assets out here, not liabilities." His matter-of-fact tone warmed something in Bernadette's chest that had been cold for a long time. They rode in companionable silence for a while, the wagon wheels creaking and the prairie stretching endlessly around them. The land was beautiful in its starkness, rolling grassland under an enormous sky. The ranch house came into view as they crested a low rise. It was a sturdy log structure, larger than Bernadette had expected, with a covered porch and real glass windows. Nearby stood a barn, several corrals, and a few smaller outbuildings. Everything looked well maintained but clearly in need of more hands to keep it running properly. A man emerged from the barn as they approached, wiping his hands on a rag. He was older than Yates, probably in his 50s, with gray hair and a weathered face that broke into a surprised expression when he saw Bernadette. "Marcus, this is Miss Bernadette Caldwell. She's going to be staying with us for a while, helping out with the ranch work." Yates set the brake and jumped down, then offered his hand to help Bernadette. "Miss Caldwell, this is Marcus Reed, my foreman and the only reason this place has not fallen apart around my ears." Marcus recovered quickly from his surprise and touched his hat brim politely. "Madam, welcome to the Morrison Ranch." "Thank you, Mr. Reed." Bernadette climbed down, grateful that Yates had not made a fuss about her size or strength. "Marcus, can you show Miss Caldwell to the spare room while I tend to the horses? Then we will all have supper and discuss the work schedule." The spare room was small but clean, with a narrow bed, a washstand, and a trunk for storage. Bernadette set down her carpetbag and looked around at what might be her new home. Through the window, she could see the barn and the endless prairie beyond. It was isolated and harsh, but it was also honest. There were no false pretenses here, no need to make herself smaller or more palatable. That evening, the three of them sat around the kitchen table, eating a simple meal of beans, bacon, and biscuits that Yates had prepared. The food was basic but filling, and Bernadette found herself relaxing as they discussed the ranch. "We have about 100 head of cattle scattered across the property," Yates explained. "They need to be checked regularly, strays brought back, any sick animals treated. The fences are always needing repair because the cattle like to test them. We have 6 horses, all working animals. The barn roof needs patching before winter, and we need to put up at least 3 more tons of hay if we want to make it through the cold months." "Winter comes hard here," Marcus added. "We can get snowed in for weeks at a time." "What happened to your other hired hands?" Bernadette asked. Yates and Marcus exchanged glances. "The work was harder than they expected," Yates said diplomatically. "And I do not tolerate laziness or men who think they can take advantage of being out here with minimal supervision. I sent 2 packing for mistreating the horses, and 1 quit because he said I worked him too hard." "Did you?" Yates considered the question seriously. "Maybe. But I work myself just as hard. Harder, probably. This ranch is everything to me. I need people who care about it the same way." After supper, Bernadette helped wash the dishes while Yates went to check on the horses one final time. Marcus lingered in the kitchen and she could feel him watching her. "You do not need to worry," she said without turning around. "I am not going to hurt him." "I know that, madam. I am just glad you are here." When she looked at him in surprise, he continued, "Yates is a good man, one of the best I have known, but he has been trying to do the work of 5 men, and it is killing him slowly. He needs help, and he is too proud to admit how desperate things have gotten." "How desperate are they?" Marcus hesitated. "He has a loan coming due in 6 months. If he cannot prove the ranch is profitable, the bank will call it in. He will lose everything." Bernadette dried the last plate and set it in the cupboard. "Then we had better get to work." The next morning, Bernadette woke before dawn to the sound of movement in the kitchen. She dressed quickly in her spare dress, wishing she had something more practical for ranch work, and joined Yates as he prepared breakfast. "You are up early," he said, looking surprised. "Farm habits." "My father always said the morning is the best part of the day before you waste it." She rolled up her sleeves. "What can I do?" They fell into an easy rhythm, Yates frying eggs while Bernadette made coffee and set the table. When Marcus joined them, they ate quickly and discussed the day's plans. "I need to ride out to the north pasture and check on the cattle," Yates said. "Marcus, can you work on that fence line by the creek? And Miss Caldwell, I thought maybe you could start with the chicken coop. We had chickens once, but I have not had time to maintain it properly. I can do that. But Mr. Morrison, if I am going to work here, I cannot do it in a dress. Do you have any spare clothes that might fit? Yates looked uncomfortable. I have some old shirts and pants that might work. They will be big, but you can cinch them with a belt. An hour later, Bernadette stood in her room looking at herself in the small mirror. The clothes were indeed large, but she had rolled up the sleeves and pant legs, and with a belt, they stayed in place well enough. Her hair she braided and pinned tightly to her head. She looked strange but practical, and that was what mattered. The chicken coop was in poor repair, with holes in the wire mesh and a sagging roof. Bernadette found tools in the barn and set to work, her hands remembering skills she had learned on her family's farm. The physical labor felt good after weeks of uncertainty and travel. By midday, she had patched the worst of the holes and reinforced the support posts. Yates found her there as the sun reached its peak. He sat on his horse, watching her work for a moment before dismounting. "You know what you are doing," he observed. "I told you I grew up on a farm." She wiped sweat from her forehead. "This needs a new roof before winter, but I have made it secure enough for now. We can work on the roof together." He pulled a canteen from his saddle and offered it to her. "You should take a break. It is hot today." Bernadette drank gratefully, the water cool and sweet. "How were the cattle?" "Lost 3 head, probably to rustlers. Found tracks leading east." His jaw tightened. "I cannot afford to lose more. Can you track them?" "I could, but by the time I get there, they will be long gone or already sold. It is one of the risks of having so much land and so few people to patrol it." He looked at her seriously. "Miss Caldwell, I want to be honest with you about the situation here. The ranch is in trouble. I have a loan coming due, and if I cannot prove it is viable, I will lose everything. That is why I cannot pay you wages right now. All I can offer is room and board and the possibility of a partnership if you decide to stay. Marcus told me about the loan." Yates's expression darkened. "He should not have. I am glad he did. I do not like going into situations blind." Bernadette handed back the canteen. "Mr. Morrison, I have nothing. No family, no money, no prospects. You are offering me work that I know how to do and a chance to build something. That is more than I had yesterday. So let us be clear with each other. I will work as hard as you need me to, and we will see if we can save this ranch together. And if somewhere in that, we figure out whether we suit each other as partners in more than just work, that will sort itself out too." Yates looked at her for a long moment, and something shifted in his expression. "You are a remarkable woman, Bernadette Caldwell." "I am a practical one, Yates Morrison. Now, are you going to help me with this roof or not?" They worked together through the afternoon, and Bernadette discovered that Yates was a patient teacher and a steady presence. He explained things without condescension and listened when she offered suggestions. By evening, the chicken coop had a new roof, and they had even managed to repair the door so it closed properly. Over the next week, Bernadette settled into the rhythm of ranch life. She rose before dawn, worked until her muscles ached, and fell into bed exhausted each night. It was hard, grinding labor, but it was also satisfying in a way her old life had never been. She was building something real, creating value with her own hands. Yates was a constant presence, working alongside her on projects or riding out to tend the cattle. They talked as they worked, sharing stories about their pasts. He told her about growing up in Texas, the youngest of 6 children, and how he had always dreamed of having his own land. She told him about her mother's flower garden and her father's slow descent into bitterness after losing the farm. "Do you miss them?" Yates asked one evening as they sat on the porch after supper, watching the sun set over the prairie. I miss who they were before everything went wrong. My father was not always a drunk. He used to laugh and play his fiddle on Saturday nights. My mother used to sing while she worked, but the people they became at the end, those people were strangers to me. She was quiet for a moment. Do you ever want a family of your own? That is why I advertised for a bride. I am tired of being alone and I want children someday. But I want it to be with someone who chooses this life, who understands what it takes to make a ranch work. He looked at her. Someone strong enough to handle the hard times. Their eyes met, and Bernadette felt something warm unfurl in her chest. Over the past week, she had come to admire Yates deeply. He was honest, hardworking, and kind in quiet, practical ways. He never made her feel like her size was something to apologize for. In fact, he seemed to appreciate her strength. "Yates," she said quietly, "I think I would like to stay. Not just for a trial period. I want to help you save this ranch and I want to see if we can build something together." He reached over and took her hand, his grip warm and solid. "I would like that very much." The work continued, relentless and demanding. They repaired fences, moved cattle, and prepared for winter. Bernadette proved herself capable again and again, whether she was wrestling a stubborn steer back into a corral or helping to birth a calf in the middle of a cold night. Yates watched her with growing admiration and something deeper. One afternoon, nearly a month after her arrival, they were working together to patch the barn roof when Yates suddenly spoke. "Bernadette, I need to tell you something." She looked up from the shingle she was nailing down. "What is it?" "When you first arrived, I was relieved that you were not the delicate woman from the letters, but it was not just because I needed help with the ranch." He set down his hammer and moved closer. "I was relieved because I find you extraordinary. Your strength, your competence, your refusal to apologize for who you are. I have been alone out here for years and I have been lonely. But meeting you has made me realize I was not just lonely for company. I was lonely for a true partner." Bernadette's heart pounded. "Yates, I know it has only been a month, and I know we agreed to take time, but I also know what I feel. I am falling in love with you, Bernadette. I love your laugh and your stubbornness, and the way you never give up even when a task seems impossible. I love that you are strong enough to stand beside me, not behind me." He took her hand. "I would like to marry you, not because I need help with the ranch, but because I cannot imagine spending the rest of my life with anyone else." Tears stung Bernadette's eyes. She had never expected to hear words like this, had never imagined a man would see her as anything but too much, too large, too unfeminine. But Yates looked at her like she was exactly what he had been searching for. "I love you too," she whispered. "I did not want to at first. I was so afraid of being hurt or rejected, but you have been nothing but kind and honest with me. You make me feel valued for who I am, not in spite of it." She squeezed his hand. "Yes, Yates Morrison, I will marry you." He pulled her into his arms, and they kissed there on the barn roof under the wide Wyoming sky. It was not a delicate or tentative kiss. It was fierce and full of promise, the kiss of two people who had found exactly what they needed in each other. They climbed down from the roof and found Marcus in the corral, working with one of the horses. When they told him the news, his weathered face split into a genuine smile. "About time," he said gruffly. "I was beginning to wonder if you two were going to dance around each other all winter." They were married a week later in Wheatland, with Marcus as their witness and the local minister presiding. Bernadette wore a simple blue dress that the minister's wife had helped her alter to fit properly, and Yates wore his best shirt and clean pants. It was not a fancy wedding, but it was honest and full of joy. That night, as they lay together in the bed that was now theirs, Yates held Bernadette close and kissed her forehead. "Thank you for taking a chance on a desperate rancher," he murmured. "Thank you for seeing me," she replied. really seeing me. The next morning, they woke to frost on the windows and the realization that winter was coming fast. There was still so much work to do before the snow arrived, but now they faced it as true partners. Over the next months, they worked harder than Bernadette had ever worked in her life. They hauled hay, repaired buildings, and moved cattle to winter pastures. Marcus proved invaluable, his experience and steady presence helping them accomplish tasks that would have been impossible with just two people. The first snow came in early November, a light dusting that melted by afternoon. But it was a warning of what was coming. Yates became even more driven, pushing them all to finish the critical preparations. Bernadette worried about him, seeing the strain in his face and the way he pushed past exhaustion. "You are going to work yourself to death," she told him one night as he came in long after dark, his face gray with fatigue. "I cannot lose this ranch," he said quietly. "It is everything I have worked for. You will not lose it, but you are no good to anyone if you collapse." She guided him to a chair and began removing his boots. "We are in this together, remember? Let me help carry the burden." December brought serious snow, storms that lasted for days and left drifts as high as the windows. They were trapped at the ranch, the three of them working to keep the animals fed and the buildings maintained. It was brutal, exhausting work, but there was also something intimate about being isolated together, relying on each other completely. On Christmas Eve, Bernadette surprised both men by producing a small feast she had been secretly preparing. She had traded eggs in town weeks ago for supplies and had been hiding them in the root cellar. There was roast chicken, potatoes, cornbread, and even a small cake sweetened with precious sugar. "How did you manage this?" Yates asked, his eyes suspiciously bright. "I have my ways." She smiled at him across the table. "This is our first Christmas together. I wanted it to be special." That night, after Marcus had retired to the bunkhouse, Yates and Bernadette sat by the fire, wrapped in blankets and each other's arms. "I got you something," Yates said, producing a small package wrapped in brown paper. Inside was a beautiful leather belt, hand-tooled with intricate patterns. It was clearly made for a woman but sized for her. "I commissioned it from the saddle maker in town. I wanted you to have something that was yours, something that fit you properly." He looked almost shy. "I know it is not fancy, but I thought it was practical." Bernadette ran her fingers over the leather, touched beyond words. It was the most thoughtful gift anyone had ever given her, acknowledging her size without making it something shameful. "It is perfect," she said, kissing him. "I love it, I love you. I have something for you too." She retrieved her own package, much smaller. Inside was a watch, old but polished to a shine. "It was my father's, one of the few things I kept. Before he became what he was at the end, he was a good man and a good father. I want you to have it, to remember that time matters and we should not waste what we have been given." Yates fastened the watch to his vest pocket, his hand trembling slightly. "I will treasure it. Thank you, Bernadette." They made love that night with the fire burning low and snow falling outside. Two people who had found in each other exactly what they needed. January was the hardest month. The cold was relentless, and they lost 2 cattle to the weather despite their best efforts. Yates grew quieter, the stress of the impending loan payment weighing on him. The bank had given him until June, but they needed to show profit, and it was far from certain they would manage it. One morning in late January, Bernadette woke to find Yates already up, sitting at the kitchen table with papers spread before him. His face was haggard. "What is wrong?" she asked, though she knew. "The numbers do not add up. Even if we sell every head of cattle at top price, even if we do not lose any more to weather or rustlers, we are going to be short." He looked up at her, and she saw defeat in his eyes for the first time since she had known him. "I am going to lose the ranch, Bernadette. I am sorry. I brought you out here and promised you a future, and now I cannot deliver it." Bernadette sat down across from him and took his hands. "Listen to me, Yates Morrison. We are not defeated yet. We have 5 months to figure this out. Maybe we can find other ways to make money. We could take in horses for training or sell hay to other ranchers, or I could take in sewing work. It would not be enough. Then we will find something that is." She squeezed his hands hard enough to hurt. "I did not come all the way out here and fall in love with you just to give up at the first real obstacle. We are going to fight for this ranch, and we are going to win." Her fierce determination seemed to spark something in Yates. He straightened, his jaw setting in the way she recognized as his stubborn look. "You are right. I am sorry. I let fear get the better of me. We all do sometimes. That is why we have each other." Over the next weeks, they brainstormed every possible way to increase the ranch's income. Bernadette suggested breeding their best mare to a stallion in town and selling the foal. Marcus knew a merchant in Cheyenne who was always looking for quality beef. Yates decided to risk taking a small herd to market early, hoping to get better prices before the spring rush. In March, Yates and Marcus prepared to drive 20 head of cattle to Cheyenne, a journey that would take nearly 2 weeks. Bernadette would stay behind to manage the ranch, a responsibility that both excited and terrified her. The night before they left, Yates held her close in bed. "Are you certain you can manage alone? I managed a farm by myself after my father became useless. I can manage this for 2 weeks." She kissed his cheek. "Besides, I will have the rifle and my own stubbornness. Any rustler who comes around will regret it. I have no doubt of that." He was quiet for a moment. "Bernadette, if something happens to me on this drive, the ranch is yours. I have papers drawn up with the lawyer in town. Everything I own becomes yours. Nothing is going to happen to you. But if it does, I want you to know you are not alone. You will have options." She turned in his arms to face him fully. "Yates Morrison, you are coming back to me. I will not accept any other outcome. Do you understand?" He smiled, some of the tension leaving his face. "Yes, madam." They left at dawn, and Bernadette stood on the porch watching until they disappeared over the horizon. Then she squared her shoulders and went to work. The next 2 weeks were some of the longest of her life. She managed the daily chores, checked the remaining cattle, repaired a section of fence that collapsed in a storm, and dealt with a minor injury to one of the horses. Every night she fell into bed exhausted and alone, missing Yates with a physical ache. On the 14th day, she saw riders approaching and ran to the porch, her heart in her throat. Relief flooded through her when she recognized Yates's silhouette. She was off the porch and running before she thought about dignity or propriety, meeting him as he dismounted and throwing her arms around him. "I missed you," she said against his chest. "I missed you too." He held her tight, his face buried in her hair. "God, I missed you." That night, after Marcus had gone to the bunkhouse and they had reunited properly in their bedroom, Yates told her about the drive. "We got good prices, better than I hoped. It is not enough to cover the loan entirely, but it is a start." He pulled out a leather pouch heavy with coins. "We have a chance now, Bernadette. A real chance." Spring brought new challenges and new hope. The cattle that had survived the winter were healthy, and several cows gave birth to strong calves. The grass came in thick and green, promising good grazing. Bernadette's bread-making had improved to the point where Yates suggested she might sell loaves in town, and to their surprise, it became a steady source of small income. One warm May morning, Bernadette woke feeling strange. She made it to the basin just in time to lose her breakfast, and the realization hit her with shocking clarity. She sat on the floor of their bedroom, one hand on her stomach, trying to process what this meant. Yates found her there when he came looking for her. "Bernadette, Are you all right? He knelt beside her, concern written across his face. I think I am pregnant. He stared at her, the words clearly taking a moment to register. Then his face transformed with joy so pure it made her eyes sting with tears. A baby. We are having a baby. It seems that way. She laughed shakily. Your timing is excellent. We might lose the ranch right as we start a family. We are not going to lose the ranch. He pulled her into his arms, his hand already moving protectively to her stomach. I promise you, Bernadette, I am going to save this place for our child, for our family. The pregnancy added new urgency to their efforts. They worked even harder, though Yates tried to keep Bernadette from the heaviest tasks, something she resisted stubbornly. I am pregnant, not made of glass, she informed him after he tried to prevent her from helping move hay. I know, but I worry. Then worry while I work because we cannot afford for me to sit idle. June arrived with summer heat and the looming bank meeting. They had done everything they could, sold everything they could spare, and cut costs to the bone. The night before the meeting, Yates could not sleep. He stood on the porch in the darkness and Bernadette joined him, wrapping a shawl around her shoulders. Whatever happens tomorrow, we will face it together, she said quietly. I know. I just wish I could give you more certainty. You have given me everything that matters. A home, love, purpose. Even if we lose the ranch, we will not lose those things. He turned to her, cupping her face in his hands. How did I get so lucky? You advertised for a bride and got someone twice the size you expected. Some people might call that unlucky. Then those people are fools. He kissed her softly. You are the best thing that ever happened to me, Bernadette Morrison. The next morning they dressed in their best clothes and rode to town together. Marcus stayed behind to mind the ranch, clasping Yates's shoulder in silent support before they left. The bank was a solid brick building on Main Street, imposing and official. Inside, they were shown to a room where Mr. Thornton, the bank manager, waited with papers spread before him. He was a thin man with wire-rimmed spectacles and an expression that gave nothing away. Mr. Morrison, Mrs. Morrison, please sit. He gestured to chairs across from his desk. I have reviewed your account and the payments you have made over the past months. Bernadette reached over and took Yates's hand, squeezing tight. This was the moment that would determine their future. Mr. Thornton looked up, his expression still unreadable. I must say, Mr. Morrison, when we agreed to this loan, I had my doubts about the ranch's viability. The property is large but remote, and the market for cattle can be unpredictable. Yes, sir. Yates's voice was steady, though Bernadette could feel the tension in his grip. However, the payments you have made, particularly in the last few months, show consistent profit. Your cattle are quality stock. Your management has improved significantly, and you have demonstrated the ability to generate income through multiple channels. He paused, and the hint of a smile crossed his face. I am prepared to extend your loan with modified terms, giving you an additional 2 years to pay the balance. The ranch is proving viable, Mr. Morrison. I see no reason to call the loan. The relief was so intense that Bernadette felt dizzy. Yates sat frozen for a moment as if unable to process the words. You are extending the loan, he finally said. Yes, with the stipulation that you continue to make quarterly payments at the current rate. Mr. Thornton shuffled papers. I will have the new contract drawn up. You can sign it next week. They walked out of the bank in a daze, not speaking until they reached the wagon. Then Yates turned to Bernadette and pulled her into his arms, his whole body shaking. We did it, he whispered. We actually did it. We did, she agreed, her own voice unsteady. The ranch is safe. They held each other in the middle of the street, not caring who saw, 2 people who had fought for their dream and won. The ride home was jubilant. They stopped by the general store to pick up supplies and a few small treats to celebrate, then raced back to the ranch to tell Marcus the good news. The old foreman actually whooped when they told him, something Bernadette had never heard him do. That night, they celebrated with a special dinner and Marcus's carefully hoarded bottle of whiskey. They toasted their future, their family, and the ranch that had brought them together. As summer progressed, Bernadette's pregnancy became more obvious. She had to stop wearing Yates's borrowed pants and return to dresses, something she mourned until Yates surprised her with split skirts he had ordered from a catalog, designed for women who worked ranches. "Now you can be comfortable and practical," he said, looking pleased with himself. The split skirts were perfect, allowing her to ride horses and do most of her normal work without restriction. She wore them constantly, grateful once again for Yates's thoughtfulness. In late August, they hired 2 new ranch hands, young men fresh from the East who were willing to work hard and learn. This allowed Bernadette to step back from the heaviest labor as her pregnancy advanced, though she still helped with cooking, bookkeeping, and lighter tasks. One afternoon in September, she was working in the garden she had planted behind the house when she felt the first real kick. She gasped, one hand flying to her stomach, and called for Yates. He came running, alarmed by her tone. "What is wrong?" "Nothing." "Here, feel." She placed his hand on her belly and waited. A moment later, another strong kick made his eyes widen. "That is our baby," he said wonderingly. "That is really our baby. He or she is strong, takes after their mother." She grinned at him. "Thank God for that." He knelt in the dirt beside her, both hands now on her stomach, marveling at each movement. "Hello in there. This is your father. I cannot wait to meet you." The baby kicked again, as if in response, and they both laughed. October brought the first real cold, a reminder that winter was coming again. But this year, they were prepared. The barn was stocked with hay, the buildings were in good repair, and they had money in the bank for emergencies. More importantly, they had each other and a growing family. Bernadette went into labor on a cold November night, 3 weeks before they expected. Yates rode through darkness to fetch the doctor from town while Marcus stayed with her, looking terrified and trying to hide it. "I have delivered many a calf, madam, but I admit I am a bit out of my depth here," he said, boiling water and gathering clean cloths as Bernadette had instructed earlier. "You are doing fine, Marcus," she panted between contractions. "Just stay calm." "Yes, madam." Yates returned with the doctor just after midnight, bursting into the house wild-eyed and pale. The doctor, an older man named Harris who had delivered half the babies in the county, took one look at Bernadette and immediately took charge. "Mrs. Morrison, you are doing very well." "Mr. Morrison, I need you to help support your wife." "Mr. Reed, keep that water coming." The labor was long and difficult, made more so by the fact that the baby was large, taking after both parents. But Bernadette was strong, and she had Yates beside her the entire time, holding her hand and whispering encouragement. As dawn broke over the prairie, their son entered the world with a lusty cry that made everyone laugh with relief. He was indeed large, with a head of dark hair and his mother's strong features. 10 pounds if he is an ounce, Dr. Harris said, cleaning the baby and wrapping him in blankets. "Congratulations, you two. He is perfect." Yates held his son for the first time with tears streaming down his face. "He is beautiful. Bernadette, he is so beautiful." "What should we name him?" Bernadette asked, exhausted but glowing as she held her baby. They had discussed names endlessly but never quite decided. Now, looking at his son, Yates said, "I would like to name him after my father if you agree. David." "David Morrison. David." Bernadette tested the name and smiled. "I love it. Hello, David. Welcome to the world." The first months with a newborn were exhausting, but they managed. Marcus proved surprisingly adept at baby care, often taking David for a walk when both parents were overwhelmed. The new ranch hands stepped up to handle more of the daily work, allowing Yates to spend more time with his family. Bernadette proved to be a natural mother, patient and loving despite her own exhaustion. She nursed David while handling the ranch bookkeeping, rocked him to sleep while planning the next season's crops. Yates watched her in awe, falling more in love with her every day. Winter came again, but this year it felt different. The house was full of life and love. David's cries punctuated their days, and his gummy smiles made even the hardest tasks worthwhile. They took turns walking him on cold nights, singing lullabies and making promises about the future. Spring arrived with renewed hope. They had survived another winter, made their loan payments and welcomed a healthy child. The ranch was thriving, with new calves and strong grass. They talked about expanding, maybe buying adjacent land if it became available. One warm May evening, when David was 6 months old and beginning to sit up on his own, Bernadette and Yates sat on the porch watching him play on a blanket at their feet. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. "You ever think about that day at the stagecoach?" Bernadette asked. "When I arrived and thought you would send me away, all the time, I think about how close I came to never knowing you, never having this life." He reached over and took her hand. "That letter that described someone completely different from who you are turned out to be the greatest gift I ever received. If Melody had been honest, I might not have recognized what I really needed." "What do you mean?" "I thought I needed someone to take care of, someone delicate who would make me feel useful. But what I really needed was an equal, someone strong enough to stand with me through the hard times." He squeezed her hand. "I needed you, exactly as you are." Bernadette felt tears prick her eyes. "I spent so much of my life wishing I was smaller, more delicate, more like what men seem to want. But you made me see that my strength is not something to apologize for. It is something to celebrate. You are extraordinary, Bernadette Morrison, the most extraordinary woman I have ever known." He pulled her close, careful not to disturb David, who was happily chewing on a wooden toy. "I love you more than I thought it was possible to love another person. I love you too, so much." They sat in comfortable silence, watching their son and the endless prairie beyond. The land that had once seemed harsh and unforgiving now felt like home, a place they had built together through determination and love. Over the following years, their family grew. 2 years after David, they welcomed a daughter they named Sarah, who had her father's gray eyes and her mother's stubborn streak. 3 years later came another son, James, who was calm and thoughtful from birth. The ranch grew too, expanding to over 1,000 acres with 200 head of cattle. Marcus became like family, an honorary grandfather who taught the children to ride and told them stories about the old days. The original 2 ranch hands stayed on, eventually bringing their own wives to the area and starting families. The Morrison Ranch became the heart of a small community, a place known for hard work and fair dealing. Bernadette never lost her strength or her stubborn independence, though she learned to let others help when she needed it. She became known throughout the county as a woman who could handle any challenge, whether it was a difficult birth, a problem with livestock, or a neighbor in need. Yates never stopped appreciating her capabilities, never took for granted the partner he had found. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Yates surprised Bernadette by commissioning a sign for the ranch entrance. It read, "Morrison Ranch, ESD, 1876, built on strength and love." "It is perfect," Bernadette said, tears in her eyes as they stood with their 3 children, looking at the sign in the late afternoon sun. "I wanted everyone to know what this place is really about," Yates said, his arm around her shoulders. It was never just about the land or the cattle. It was about finding someone to build a life with, someone strong enough to weather any storm. That evening, after the children were in bed, they sat on the porch as they had done countless times before. The ranch stretched out before them, thriving and beautiful, a testament to everything they had built together. "You ever regret it?" Yates asked. "Coming out here, marrying a stranger, working so hard for a dream that was not even yours at first?" Bernadette considered the question seriously. She thought about her old life, her dead parents, her desperate circumstances. She thought about the journey west and her fear when she first arrived. Then she looked at the ranch, thought about her children sleeping peacefully inside, and felt Yates's solid presence beside her. "Not for a single moment," she said firmly. "This is exactly where I am supposed to be. Good. Because I need strong arms, and you have the best ones I have ever known." He grinned at her, repeating the words that had changed both their lives. She laughed and pushed his shoulder playfully. "You said that because you needed help with the ranch work." "I said it because I needed you, Bernadette. I just did not know it yet." He grew more serious, taking both her hands in his. "Every day I wake up grateful that you walked off that stagecoach and into my life. You are my partner, my love, my best friend. You are everything I never knew I needed. And you gave me something I never thought I would have. A place where I belong exactly as I am, where my strength is valued instead of something to hide." She leaned against him, content. "We are a good team, Yates Morrison. The best team." He kissed the top of her head. "I love you. I love you too." As the stars came out over the Wyoming prairie, they sat together in peaceful silence, two people who had found exactly what they needed in each other. The ranch they had built, the family they had created, the life they shared, all of it was built on honesty, hard work, and a love that grew stronger with every passing year. The letter that had brought them together had been full of lies and exaggerations, describing a woman who did not exist. But those lies had led to a truth more beautiful than either of them could have imagined. Bernadette was not delicate or small or in need of protection. She was strong and capable and fierce. And Yates had looked at her and said exactly what she needed to hear. "Good. I need strong arms." Those words had changed everything. They had opened the door to a partnership built on mutual respect and genuine appreciation. They had created space for love to grow, not despite their differences, but because of them. And they had led to a life rich in meaning, purpose, and joy. As they finally rose to go inside, to check on their sleeping children and prepare for another day of work ahead, Bernadette paused at the door and looked back at the land one more time. The moonlight turned the prairie silver, beautiful and wild and full of promise. "Thank you," she whispered to the wind, to fate, to whatever force had brought her here. Yates appeared beside her, following her gaze. "What are you thanking?" "Everything. The failed farm, the desperate circumstances, even Melody's ridiculous letters. All of it led me here, to you, to this life." She turned to him, her strong, honest face illuminated by moonlight. "I would not change a single thing." He pulled her close, his heart full. "Neither would I, not one thing." They went inside together, closing the door on the night but not on their dreams. Those continued to grow and flourish, nourished by love and hard work and the deep satisfaction of building something lasting. Years continued to pass, each one bringing new challenges and new joys. They weathered droughts and harsh winters, celebrated births and mourned deaths, fought with each other and made up with equal passion. Through it all, they remained partners in the truest sense, each making the other stronger. David grew into a young man who loved the ranch as much as his father did, learning every aspect of the work with quiet determination. Sarah proved to have a gift with horses, able to gentle even the wildest Mustang with patience and skill. James, the youngest, showed an interest in books and learning, and they began to talk about sending him to school in Cheyenne. Marcus grew older but never lost his love for the ranch or the family he had helped build. He bounced grandchildren on his knee and taught them the same lessons he had taught their parents. Work hard, be honest, and never give up on your dreams. On a warm summer day in 1892, Bernadette stood in the garden behind the house, now expanded to include vegetables, herbs, and the flowers she had always loved. She was 41 years old, her hair showing threads of silver, her hands permanently calloused from work. She was more beautiful than ever. Yates found her there, as he had done countless times over the years. He was 45 now, his hair more silver than sandy, his face deeply lined by sun and wind. But his eyes were the same, full of love and appreciation when he looked at his wife. "The children want to plan a party for our anniversary," he said, sliding his arms around her from behind. "We have been married 16 years. That seems worth celebrating." She leaned back against him, comfortable and content. "I was thinking we should renew our vows. Do it properly this time, with all our friends and family there." He rested his chin on her shoulder. "I want to stand up in front of everyone and tell them again how lucky I am." Bernadette turned in his arms to face him. "Yates Morrison, you are the most romantic cowboy in Wyoming." "Only because I married the most amazing woman in Wyoming." He kissed her softly. "So what do you say? Will you marry me again?" "Every day for the rest of my life," she promised. The renewal ceremony took place on a golden September afternoon with half the county in attendance. They stood under an arch that David and Sarah had built, decorated with flowers from Bernadette's garden. Marcus stood beside them, his eyes suspiciously bright. Their children watched with proud smiles. This time, when they spoke their vows, they wrote the words themselves. Yates spoke of strength and partnership, of love that grew deeper with shared work and shared dreams. Bernadette spoke of finding home in a person rather than a place, of being truly seen and valued for the first time in her life. "You told me you needed strong arms," she said, her voice carrying across the assembled crowd. "What you gave me was a reason to be strong, a purpose for all that strength. You never tried to make me smaller or softer or less than I am. You celebrated everything about me, even the things the world said were too much. I promise to stand beside you for all the years we have left, to be your partner in all things, and to love you with everything I am." There was not a dry eye in the crowd. The party lasted until midnight, with food and music and dancing under the stars. Bernadette danced with Yates, with her children, with Marcus, with neighbors and friends. She danced in her special occasion dress made to fit her strong frame, her head held high, her heart full of joy. As the last guests departed and they stood on the porch watching the stars, Yates pulled Bernadette close. "Happy?" he asked. "Happier than I ever thought possible," she confirmed. They stood together in peaceful silence, the ranch quiet around them. Inside, their children slept safely. In the barn, healthy livestock rested. In the bank, their accounts showed solid profit. But more importantly, in their hearts was a love that had been tested by fire and emerged stronger for it. "I was thinking," Yates said eventually, "that we should write down our story. For the children and grandchildren, so they know how it all began." "What would we call it?" he considered. "How about the mail-order bride who was twice the size her letter claimed, and the cowboy who said, 'Good, I need strong arms'?" Bernadette laughed, the sound carrying across the prairie. "That is quite a title. It is quite a story, one worth remembering." He squeezed her hand. "Our great-grandchildren should know that sometimes the best things in life come from unexpected places. That strength is beautiful. That honesty matters more than appearances. That real love sees who you actually are and celebrates it." Then we will write it, Bernadette agreed. Every detail, every struggle, every triumph. We will write it so they understand that this ranch, this family, everything we built, it started with a lie in a letter and a cowboy brave enough to tell the truth. And they did. Over the following winter, they wrote their story in neat handwriting on good paper, chronicling their journey from strangers to partners to soulmates. They wrote about the hard work and the joy, the fears and the triumphs. They wrote about what it meant to truly see another person and be seen in return. The years continued to flow like water, bringing change and growth. David married a strong-willed teacher from Cheyenne and brought her back to the ranch. Sarah fell in love with a horse trader who appreciated her skills. James went to university but always came home for the summers, bringing new ideas and enthusiasm. Marcus passed away peacefully in his sleep at the age of 73, mourned by everyone who knew him. They buried him on a hill overlooking the ranch, and Bernadette planted wildflowers on his grave every spring. Grandchildren arrived, filling the house with noise and laughter. Bernadette proved to be as excellent a grandmother as she had been a mother, patient and loving but never afraid to set boundaries. Yates taught his grandsons to rope and his granddaughters to ride, believing firmly that all children should know how to work hard and appreciate the land. On their 25th anniversary, they took a photograph together, one of the first the ranch had ever seen. In it, Yates stands straight and proud, his arm around Bernadette's waist. She is the same height as him, broad-shouldered and strong, her face calm and content. They look like what they are, partners in every sense of the word, two people who have built something beautiful together. The photograph would become treasured by their descendants, passed down through generations as proof that real love has nothing to do with conventional beauty or traditional roles. It has everything to do with seeing another person truly and loving them for exactly who they are. As they entered their later years, Yates and Bernadette gradually handed more responsibility to their children, though they never stopped working entirely. They remained active in the ranch's operation, offering advice and assistance when needed but trusting the next generation to carry on what they had built. They spent more time together, often sitting on the porch in the evenings as they had always done, talking about everything and nothing. They watched the ranch evolve, saw their grandchildren grow, and marveled at how quickly time passed. "You remember that first day?" Bernadette asked one evening when they were both in their 60s. "When I stepped off the stagecoach and you saw I was not what you expected." "I remember thinking I had been given a gift I did not deserve," Yates said, "and then spending every day since trying to be worthy of you. You have always been worthy of me. We have been worthy of each other." She took his hand, their fingers intertwining as naturally as breathing. "We built something good here, Yates, something that will last long after we are gone. We did, together." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sun set over the prairie that had become their home. The same prairie that had witnessed their first meeting, their struggles, their triumphs, and their enduring love. As darkness fell and stars began to appear, they rose to go inside, moving more slowly now but still moving together, still in step after all these years. "I love you, Bernadette Morrison," Yates said, as he had said thousands of times before. "I love you, Yates Morrison," she replied, as she had replied thousands of times before, and they meant it just as deeply as they had the very first time. The Morrison Ranch continued to thrive for generations, a legacy built on honesty, hard work, and love. But it all began with a mail-order bride who was twice the size her letter claimed, and a cowboy who looked at her and said the words that changed both their lives forever. "Good. I need strong arms." Those arms had helped build a ranch, raise a family, and create a love story that would be remembered long after both of them were gone. It was a story that proved beauty comes in all forms, that strength is something to celebrate, and that the best partnerships are built on seeing each other truly and loving without reservation. It was a story of the Wild West, of hard work and harsh land, and the people brave enough to tame both. But more than that, it was a love story, pure and simple, about two people who found in each other exactly what they needed and spent the rest of their lives grateful for it. And it all started with a lie that led to truth, a deception that revealed authenticity, and a moment of perfect honesty that changed everything. Good. I need strong arms. Those strong arms had held so much over the years, children, grandchildren, dreams, and hopes. But most importantly, they had held each other through everything life brought their way. And that, in the end, was what mattered most. As Yates and Bernadette Morrison grew old together on their ranch in Wyoming, surrounded by family and love and the land they had claimed as their own, they knew that their story was exactly what it should be. Not perfect, but real. Not easy, but worth every struggle. Not conventional, but completely, beautifully, undeniably theirs. And when they finally passed, many years later, within months of each other, as couples who have loved deeply sometimes do, they left behind a ranch that still stands, a family that still thrives, and a story that still reminds people that the most important thing you can do is see others truly and love them for exactly who they are. The end of their story was really just a beginning, the continuation of a legacy built on strength, honesty, and love that refused to be bound by convention or expectation. It was a legacy that said being true to yourself is more important than fitting into what others expect. That strength comes in many forms, and that real love celebrates differences rather than trying to erase them. Generations later, the descendants of Yates and Bernadette Morrison still told their story, still marveled at the courage it took to build a life from nothing, and still appreciated the simple truth at its heart. Sometimes the best things in life come from the most unexpected places, and the greatest gift you can give someone is to see them exactly as they are and love them all the more for it. The mail-order bride was twice the size her letter claimed. The cowboy said, "Good, I need strong arms," and together they built something that lasted forever.